Can you hear me?
Anybody want waters?
Martini. Yes, with the Zen energy in the room.
My faith has to be bigger than my fear, because if not, my fears will take over.
God breaks you before he builds you. And that is because your light will bother some people. And that's gotta be okay. You gotta keep shining anyways.
I had to perform for my parents and my siblings' first marriage. And there was a point where I healed myself and reparented myself and said, no, this is who I'm gonna be.
I think sexual suppression equals suppression in so many other areas of our life. This is cycle breaking, and it's hard work, but it's beautiful. It's our contribution to the world.
Today's guest is a woman who has built something rare, a life where her clinical training, her faith, her cultural roots, her creativity are not separate components. They're all one thing. Dr. Genesis Ettienne, a licensed mental health counselor, marriage and family therapist, and pastoral psychologist. She serves as the director of behavioral health at the Pritikin Longevity Center in Miami. And she has spent her career helping individuals and families heal from the inside out, blending therapy, spirituality, cultural sensitivity, and physical wellness into one holistic approach. And then in 2024, she picked up a paintbrush, or more accurately, a sneaker. Genesis Sneaker Art is her creative project where she tells her clients stories of resilience and personal triumph through wearable art. Each pair is a one-of-a-kind story. Each story is someone's survival. Dr. Ettienne, I'm so glad you are here. Welcome to Rooted in Resilience.
Thank you so much for having me,
It's
Zarina.
such a pleasure.
I'm excited.
So I really want to, get our guests to understand everything about you and what you represent and how you help people heal. Your background, it includes Latin American and Caribbean studies alongside your clinical training. Tell me about where you come from, and not just academically, but the woman and the world that helped shape you.
Oh, that's a loaded question, right? So my passion was always Caribbean studies. My family is from the Caribbean, originally from Cuba and then a little bit of the Cayman Islands. But the woman and the place where I'm from is definitely rooted in the immigrant experience. And I think that is really the resilience experience, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of being able to take the struggles, take the culture, and be able to use it to help, to tell a story, to understand your own story. I really love the background that I've had with my education in terms of Caribbean American studies, and pastoral psychology, the art, and all of that. All of that, I think, is a story of resilience, because that is coming to, right? I had to come to those things. I had to kind of understand how those things shaped me, how they helped me, how they limited me, and how they, eventually created kind of where I'm at and what I'm doing and why I want to help and why those things coming together is really important.
Was there something about your upbringing that you had to reconcile with your formal education?
Yes, there was a lot about my upbringing. So I think that as the child of immigrants, again, that's a story of resilience. And in order for me to be a therapist and in order for me to help people, we have to look at those stories, right? We have to kind of look at where that comes from. There were things that happened in my childhood that looked like they were resilience, right? Different traumas, accidents. My father was sick. There was deaths. And I think that for a lot of people, especially immigrants, resilience is like, we don't talk about it. And we push through and we don't let other people know what's going on and we work harder, right? And so I think that what resilience looks like for them could be like a sacrifice. It could be sacrifice, because while we are doing this thing to continue to push through, to persevere, we're also not facing feelings and traumas and emotions and limitations that sometimes keep you stuck. Right?
Absolutely.
I'm stuck in that story.
Absolutely. So you're a licensed mental health counselor and a marriage and family therapist and a pastoral psychologist. That's a deeply intentional combination. What was God doing in building a particular set of gifts in you?
I think that what God is doing with my work is to look at our frailties and our pathologies with a much broader lens. In traditional mental health counseling, it's all about, chemical issues and, what's not working and trauma and all of these other things, right? That really kind of impact how we move through the world. But I think that once we're looking at it from a spiritual lens, once we look at it from a cultural lens, you're allowed to create a bigger, broader, enhanced version of what's going on. And what I mean by that is that I remember one time there was a client that comes to me and was like, I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I think it's Duppy that's coming to visit me, right? And I was like, well, what else is happening, right? How's your food? How's this? And so to be able to understand that was that person's perspective of what was happening. Maybe it was a Duppy, right? It could also be that your cortisol is really high and you haven't been sleeping well because of what's been going on with your stress in the day. So being able to kind of be inclusive of a person's story and understanding, and then being able to use that with mental health and the lens of mental health gives me, I think, a broader way to help people, to not necessarily have them feel like something is wrong with them, right? But to really kind of contextualize what is happening and how and in what context,
And how do you integrate spirituality into your work with someone who may not share or have the same, view of faith?
Faith is, so spirituality and faith are very much intertwined, but I think that a broader way of looking at spirituality is meaning, right? What are the things that you're going through mean in your life, right? Just beyond what's happening. What does it mean for you to experience this depression, right? And the bigger is, why do you think that you're experiencing this, right? What are you learning from this? What kind of limitation is in your way? That if we look at it with a mental health lens, which is really good, we can look at it, pathologically. But if we look at it through a bigger lens, what is this meaning for you? Where is this coming from? Where is this going to take you? How is this helping you to grow? When I work with clients who are highly stressed or really kind of going through some major traumas, I have asked them about other times in their life when they have been in a similar situation, when they've been stressed or sad or depressed or anxious. Well, what good came out of that? Right? On the other side of that, how were you met? What came out of that? And so when you can kind of identify and reflect on other times when things didn't work out, all of a sudden now you can look forward to there being a benefit to this moment in your life that is so difficult. And that is spiritual to me, that is meaning, that is infusing, God and spirituality into your story so that first of all, so that you're not dealing with it by yourself. Right. And second of all, so that you realize that it's not kind of in a vacuum. It's not in vain that you're going through this moment or this difficulty in your life. It's meant to take you someplace else.
Absolutely.
Without the ugly, we cannot see the beauty,
Absolutely.
and that is God, and that is spirituality, and that is health,
That is so true. And I completely agree with you. The lens in which we look through for, the times we go through, how we look at it is what's going to impact what we see in perspective. Absolutely.
Perception.
Has your faith ever been the thing that carried you through, hard seasons or your hardest season in your professional life?
Girl, it's carrying me through that right now, and I think, my faith allows for me to put it down. I think a lot of the times as women, we have a lot to carry, and that's difficult, I think, especially when we lack community, when we don't necessarily have a lot of support, when family issues are very present, when there is nobody else around. There is always, my God is always around, and if there is never anyone around, I know that I'm always truly not alone, and prayer works, man, and meditation works, and silence works. And that is where I see God kind of coming through. It's helped me certainly in my own issues, and things in my life that have been difficult have usually been spent by myself. And the only other person that's been there, I think, has been my friend God, and I continue to rely on that on the great days and on the not so great days,
Absolutely. Wow, 100%. So you specialize in childhood trauma. So that's rarely a coincidence in this field. What did you carry into adulthood that eventually brought you into that specialty?
Probably a lot of unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I think that, and God bless my family. You know, I'm a child of the 80s. I don't know that we had the tools that we have now, that we had the vocabulary then that we have now, you know? And so, again, speaking of resilience, growing up when things got hard or if things didn't go well, you push through, you work hard. We're not going to talk about it. There's nothing we can do about it. And I'm grateful, right, that there was that kind of perseverance spirit in my home that taught me that even when things are hard, you got to get through it. But I think that me having my own unresolved things that I had to work through allowed for me to give my clients and even my children the language that they need to say, I'm not well, or this is what I need, or this is what I'm feeling right now, or these are my emotions, you know. But certainly my own trauma and my own childhood stress and the things that we go through, you know,
To build you.
that build you and break you and then build you. We're all
I don't
on
know
the
if it's
same
I don't know if it's an
waters.
island thing, but we're not raised to share feelings and express these type of things.
Absolutely.
We're raised to bottle it up and move on.
I'm
Be
so
tough.
Are you kidding me? And I think like, you know, I think about now and how acceptable and how wonderful and how encouraged we are to
Absolutely.
get help and look for alternative ways of healing and go to therapy. You know, our mothers did not have
Absolutely
this. You know,
not.
they didn't have the opportunity, the language, the tools, the space to even have the experiences that we have. So I'm always so grateful that I was born in this time
In this time.
where we're allowed the space.
It's
you
become
know.
acceptable and honorable to face those things and deal with
Absolutely.
them.
And funded and resourced.
Absolutely.
You know,
And it makes us better people to parent to our children.
girl, I am like my kids are such incredible examples of what happens when you take your time, when you're present with your kids, when you listen to them, and when you equip them.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm so proud of them. Even the way that they fight. You know, I remember fighting with my sister. We're like throwing stuff and argue. I mean, all the cuss words. My kids are like, I don't really appreciate that you said that, Shane, and I'd like to hear your part on it. And the little one comes back, and at the end of it, they're hugging out, and I'm like, this is how you break a cycle.
Absolutely.
This is cycle breaking, and it's hard work, man, but it's beautiful. It's our contribution to the world.
It is.
Our
absolutely.
kids are our contribution to the world.
And the more we heal ourselves, the better we can be for them. We break cycles.
I was preparing for this interview and you said something about, one of the questions was about my kids. Maybe you, and you might ask the question in a little bit. And I think it was like, what is it that you have to give up or something to be able to be a mother or something? And I was like, that everything is negotiable. Right? That all of the things that I expect out of my children are negotiable because they were the expectations that I had that are so different and have changed so much. So much, you know, and really being able to look at your own demons and say, you know what, that doesn't belong here anymore. I don't need that in my family story moving forward.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. What do you know now about healing that younger version of you that you desperately needed to hear then?
That we cannot wait for somebody else to heal us. And we cannot wait for the apology. That we are given if we are wise and we use our tools properly, that we can reparent ourselves.
Wow.
Because as much of as a wonderful, upbringing I had with two phenomenal parents, they also lacked some of the things that I needed emotionally, out of survival, out of 100 other things, right? But I have been given the opportunity to reparent myself and to do that in the context of being a mother. I think of this example. My son, my little one, loves to cook. And I'm a little bit of a neat freak. And he, would come into the kitchen and he wants to just be free and cook. And I was like on top of him, like, you can't make a mess and you gotta clean up after yourself. And he would make a mess. And I remember, I was in the shower one day after he was cooking And I remember I was like, this neat freak thing, like this was like, this was like what stopped me from being creative when I was young, is that I didn't have the freedom to be messy,
Absolutely.
right? I had to be kind of this way and it was kind of rigid. And I was in the shower and I thought to myself, I'm going to let that child blow that kitchen up. And afterwards, I'll go in there and help him. But I don't want for my story of cleanliness and what my expectation was as a kid to now be his expectation and what I impose on him, because that's not even my story. That was my family story, you know? And in that moment, kind of, I went back later on and said to him, I'm so sorry that I maybe like ruined your experience and freedom of creativity and expressing yourself, with freedom. And he, we hugged it out because, of course, he's an awesome kid. But it was really a moment for me to reflect on, what do I want to pass on here? And where can I stop this and change this, So my own healing comes from being able to offer something different to my kids.
Oh, I agree with you completely. There's been so many times where, I promised myself growing up, I wasn't going to repeat certain patterns or habits that my parents had with me. And in moments in interacting with my kids, I found myself doing the exact same thing I said I wouldn't do.
Of course.
Because it's a learned behavior.
Condition.
And if we don't understand when to break the cycle, everything will just continue.
Or sticking to ego, or sticking because I'm right and I'm the parent, and some of these broader cultural concepts that I think that we can deconstruct. I mean, what's the point of having, this kind of rigid way when that may not have been as beneficial for us? I would have wanted a different relationship with my parents had there not been some of these rules. When you start questioning the rules, where did those rules even come from? It may have been their rules from their parents. And unless, again, you're kind of wise and insightful enough to say, what works here and what don't I want to take into my lineage? What don't I want to take into my children's future and into their parenting? And then we get to stop that, but it takes us seeing it, identifying it, and wanting to change it. And a lot of people aren't open to doing that.
No,
So kudos to you for being awesome.
They definitely are not. And I've had moments where I've had to stop myself and let the ego down and go back and apologize to my children, because I have done exactly what I said I wouldn't do in the moment, just because there's no guide and we kind of react based on what we know, and it may not be right. And this is a completely different generation.
Oh, are you kidding me? This is a generation of healing.
I've learned so much from my children. And as adults, sometimes it's hard to accept that they, could be wiser in certain areas. And my children demand kind of how they want to be treated and respected and heard. They're very clear on their boundaries. We weren't allowed to have boundaries growing up in the Caribbean.
Or an opinion, right? Absolutely. I mean, I remember the other day I was like in the mirror and I hadn't gone to the gym for a few days, and I'm like, oh, I can see a little. And my son was like, Mom, don't body shame yourself, And I'm like, what? And I thought it was beautiful because, growing up, my mother was like, oh, you don't want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? There was a very different kind of expectation. And this generation is so open to just be who you are, be authentic. Mom, we know you're weird, but you're awesome. There's this real acceptance. And as much as I have issues with like social media and all of like the new thing, I think that extrapolation of like acceptance and understanding your boundaries, and it's okay to heal and it's okay to be weird and not perfect, is a beautiful lesson that we can learn from our kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People are much, much more open about, their flaws and things that bother them about themselves. And there's more community available, I think, now to them because they kind of find each other in that, finding people who resonate with similar feelings.
Of course, and similar experiences. Like I remember growing up, like going through puberty. I didn't have stars to put on my pimples.
Exactly.
Like now you're highlighting your stars in your face because you have a pimple, and it's like, we're going to put a star on it. Are you kidding me? How awesome, right?
Absolutely.
Like what a great way to just embrace change and make it cool. And I think this generation coming up is really dope.
No, they are. Absolutely.
I love being a mom to this generation. It's so cool.
I feel like I'm learning from them, especially my younger child. I feel like she really challenges me, and she challenges me to look at myself as a parent and be like, okay, here's the cycle you need to break. Think about it, because she
Absolutely.
makes some really valid points sometimes.
They're
And
smart.
oh yeah, absolutely.
They're smart and they're insightful and they are communicating well and they have very well established boundaries and they are not mean girls, you know? I mean, it's just such a whole different generation. Again, I'm blessed to be able to witness it and be a part of it, you know?
Yeah, no, same here. Authenticity is described as the cornerstone of your practice. What has it cost you personally to live that out? Not just professionally, but in your own life?
I think the biggest cost has been relationships. You know, I think that when you're not authentic, you're performing. And we tend to perform for the most critical audience. And whenever you are performing for the most critical audience, there's always going to be a performance evaluation. And I don't want to perform for anybody at this point in my life. You know, I spend so much time in my marriage performing and as a daughter performing and even in the beginning of motherhood performing what I thought it was supposed to look like. And I find that the more that I get into myself and accept myself, the people who are not on the journey with me tend to fall away, right? And that is because your light will bother some people. And that's got to be okay. You got to keep shining anyways, you know? But definitely relationships, I would say, whether it's family relationships, friend relationships, work relationships. Um, Listen, it takes courage to be your most authentic self. And I also think it takes practice. You know, we got to practice it every day. Getting comfortable with no. You know, being okay with what yes means. I tell people in my life that yes is expensive. Anything I say yes to,
I love that.
it's going to cost me time, money, energy, resources, calories, anything I say yes to. So getting comfortable with no is a courageous act of authenticity. What do I actually want to put my effort into? Where do I actually want to be versus where I should be or where somebody else wants me to be or what that looks like? That is rebellion.
No, I love that.
It's
I love that, especially because I think I learned at such a young age that I had to have my own back and really look out for me. So I became very comfortable with knowing my boundaries and what I'll accept for me, and that what I'm willing to, like you said, perform. I had to perform for my parents and my siblings and in my first marriage. And there was a point where I healed myself and reparented myself and said, no, this is who I'm going to be. And those who are meant to be, on my journey, whether it's for a season or for a lifetime, they'll be there.
Absolutely. And on your terms.
Exactly.
And people who love you are going to go on your terms.
Exactly.
You know, and those who don't, I don't know, I don't know where they are now.
Exactly. What does it look like when a therapist is not being authentic, and how does a client feel that?
What
Especially
does it
in
look
your
like
work
when a
life?
therapist is not being authentic? It looks like condescending. It looks like lack of an authentic ear. It looks like maybe rehearsed, interventions. It looks like burnout. You know, I know when I have a hard time helping my clients, I will say it. I'm having a hard time with this right now, because I don't want to pretend like I have it all. I don't want to pretend like I can save you, I want to help you to save yourself and for you to gain enough tools on your own that you don't need to work with me forever and ever and ever. But, a therapeutic relationship requires for there to be a real presence and a real person that you're sitting and talking with.
Of course.
And when you're not authentic, I think that kills the therapeutic relationship because a lot of people come to therapy because they're tired of inauthentic relationships.
Yes.
And kind of an inauthentic experience or existence. So to have that reflected back to you sucks. I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's really,
absolutely.
it's
And I feel like nowadays too, there is a different level of therapy and therapists out there that too I've experienced, like judgment, from therapists that I've worked with, and some who are not so authentic, and their opinions are very one-sided, and they're not open to like what you're going through, and giving you genuine advice that's coming from a good place. So I think a lot of maybe personal things, influence the way they guide your journey or you try to help you heal or
Listen, you have to know what your biases are and kind of where you stand with certain things. You have to kind of know like what your expertise is in and what your limitations are. When I don't know something, I don't pretend to. You know, I am going to meet you where you're at, and I'm going to hope that you're meeting me where I'm at. And hopefully we can come through this together, you know? But I think that the worst thing that I can do as a therapist is to pretend to be able to save you or to be able to give you expertise in an area where I may not be that strong, you know? And it gives us both an opportunity to get through this particular moment in your life with real genuine support. Even if I don't have all the answers for you, I can at least be a witness to what you're going through and learn with you on this journey. But no, I mean, yeah.
And I commend that because there's so many therapists that don't do that. They don't want to admit that, okay, this is not an area I'm comfortable guiding you in or that I have experience in, you know, so they just don't benefit the client.
I think that not only is when you are the most authentic version of it as a therapist, you also allow for your client to be the most authentic version.
Absolutely.
I had a client who was really struggling with his sexuality, really struggling with his sexuality. And he was involved in church and all of this stuff. And he asked if he would be able to work with me. And I said to him, like, okay, absolutely. But I want you to know, like, I'm not a conversion therapist. Like, I'm not going to try to change your sexuality or make you, you know, fit a mold for people or for what the outside expectation is. So if that's the kind of therapist that you're looking for, I'm probably not going to be the best therapist for you, because if you're struggling through your sexuality, that is a very real part of you that I'm going to encourage you to explore and to come to terms with and to move through to get to acceptance. But I'm not going to pretend like you're not what it is, right? And so that was very relieving for him. Like, oh, I don't have to pretend to be this whole other thing now, you know? And that gave him the space to be able to really just let be what it is and experience it in all of its grandness and not just in all of its shame. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I'm sure he had great benefit from that style of honesty and authenticity with him that, you know, if this is what you're looking for, I'm not going to be the person for you. That a lot of people can't do that.
No, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong for your sexuality. I'm not going to tell you that, you know, you're going to go to hell for your sexuality, like what had been kind of the message in his family and in his culture. So again, you know, let's work with what we really have here and not with what we hope that it could be or we hope that it had been. You know what I mean?
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So still in the line of, you know, your therapeutic work, I want to shift gears a little bit. In 2024, you launched Genesis Sneaker Art, a project where you tell your clients stories of strength and resilience through wearable art. I need to hear the origin story of that. Where did that come from?
So I've always been an artist. It's interesting. That came from the diminishment of mutual exclusivity, right?
Wow.
So for most of my life, I thought I could, I was always an artist, but I didn't think that I could be an artist, right? I never thought that that would be like a career that I could have or that I could make money doing that, or it was not encouraged by any means. You know, it was like, go to school, get something reputable, something that you can do well. And I've always been a counselor and a social worker. So it was very easy for me to do therapy and do that. And then when I decided that I could be an artist and a therapist, that is how that came to be, you know. And I had some paints laying around and I had some pair of white Air Force Ones laying around. And I am all about drawing and doodling on everything. And I did it. And then my son was like, I need a pair of these, Mom. And I put all my favorite things. I put like pizza and the beach, and I put an airplane, and I put my Sagittarius because I'm a Sagittarius. I put my kids on my shoes. I put all the things. And then my son was like, I want all the things on my shoes. And then I posted it. And then somebody was like, I want you to put, these are the things I want on my shoe. And these are the things I want on my shoe.
That's
and then
amazing.
it just took off. And what I realized was that I was highlighting the things that people love about their lives, which was so different than the therapy that I do, where people are telling me about the most difficult and the things that they don't like about themselves. So that was like, this is wearing resilience, right? I'm able to wear my babies on my, on my shoes. I'm able to wear the things that I'm proud of, the things that I've gone through. I had a mountain on my shoe because the mountain represents like the things that we have to get over, and so the shoes became a place where we can highlight what we're doing well, what we're really proud of, what's beautiful, what we've gotten over and what we've come through, versus a couch where we're talking about where we're at and what hurts and
What pain
what's
we're
ugly
having.
and what's painful and who's hurt me. So it was a real switch, but it's still the story.
Absolutely.
And I'm still concerned with the story,
And what does it feel like for a client to see their story painted on sneakers?
Oh my God. I've gotten clients that send back like videos. A lot of people get the shoes for somebody that they love. So then they'll just like record it when they're opening it. And it's personal. I mean, it's the most personal gift. It's where you're from and who's important to you and what you love. And if you have an animal that you're into, I know you guys love your animals,
Yes.
your religion or your spirituality, your family. I mean, to see all the things that make you who you are. And then it's a conversation piece,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I made a pair for my brother and he's into construction. We build in the Caribbean and he was wearing his shoes and somebody was like, dude, what's this and this? And he's like, oh, I build in Turks and Caicos and right now this and my sister. And he got deals out of it just because they looked at his
Wow.
shoes and wanted to talk about like, what's the house doing on your
Amazing.
shoe and a hammer? Well, he's a builder, right? So it's a really cool way to tell your story and really
Absolutely.
unconventional
I love
way.
it.
Yeah, it's cool.
What has that type of art taught you about healing that the therapy room couldn't?
Oh, I would say it's almost more healing for me. I have a little bit of like ADHD.
I think we all do.
And I think that like sitting in an art room for 3 to 10 hours and I do nothing but just focus, to me, it's like, maybe I'm not ADHD. Maybe I'm just doing something that I'm absolutely obsessed with, right? And for the people who wear the shoes, it's what you've healed. The kids that are on your shoes are the kids that you are doing life with, the animals, the stories, the broken heart, the tear. I had a client who she does a lot of work for sex trafficking.
Oh, wow.
And she asked me to do a pair of shoes for her. And on that, there was a child on the shoe. And she was able to like present that at a conference and talk about sex trafficking. And so I think it adds to being able to wear your story like with pride.
Yeah.
Wear your resilience like with pride. Like you can actually physically wear.
And be proud of your wins. And
I mean, talk about rooted in resilience, right? I mean, it's literally, I'm in my story.
Absolutely.
And I get to walk with it.
And I think it's a good daily reminder.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
It's a good
It's been it's been a really cool way of doing storytelling and healing.
You describe storytelling as a deep passion of yours. Why do you think stories are a medium through which people heal?
Because the story holds the meaning, I often like with clients, I've said, if you say I have to pick up my kids or I have to lose weight or I have to work out, right? It is this task. It is this daunting thing that I have to do. When I say I get to pick up my kids. I get to work out. That changes how you feel about what you're doing. And it's one word. It's one word. But that one word means it can take that experience and drastically change it.
That's so true.
Yeah. So the vocabulary that we use to narrate our lives holds a lot of meaning in it intrinsically, And so if I say things like, this is really, really hard, I can't do this, versus this is very challenging and I've done something like this in the past, that is resilience, right? Versus being defeated by what is difficult. And you get to change the way that you tell your story. You get to change it.
I'm all about that.
Yeah, you get to change your story, with words.
So many people, and I've lived that. Like, I've had a very traumatic childhood and a lot of early life experiences that could have made me be the victim. And, well, why me? I didn't deserve this, or I was just a child, or why did I grow into this environment? And as I got older in perspective and maturity, and I started looking at my situation from a different lens, I definitely saw that all of those pieces were necessary to shape me and give me a completely different outlook and change my vocabulary and how that story is told
Of course.
and make me understand that everything was necessary and I wouldn't go back and change a thing.
No, I mean, just from victim to survivor,
Absolutely.
right? That is a mindset shift. That is not even just a vocabulary. That is changing your perception on how you're experiencing your life. And that is incredibly powerful when we get to, the power of tongue.
Oh, very.
If whatever you speak is what is.
Absolutely.
So if I am defeated and sad and anxious and miserable and I can't do this versus I am being challenged right now and, being asked for something else of me and being asked to experience this different, that's all based on how I language that and then how that lands in my psyche. You know what I mean? Seriously.
And the universe and our bodies and our minds, they hear and feel everything. And how you receive it, whether you bring it to your tongue or not.
Of course, frequency is real, girl.
Absolutely. I believe in that. So you work at the intersection of mental health, physical health, spirituality, and art.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see when you look at a woman who's been holding everything together on the outside, but is quietly falling apart on the inside? Something us women know way too well.
What do I see? I see a lack of support.
Okay.
I think that the biggest thing that causes for us to be falling apart is not knowing how it's going to come together. And God and art and knowing what you need, and therapy and support, family, whether it's your children, whether it's a ministry, all of those things come together to heal. And as women, I think that we don't realize what resources we already have, and sometimes I think that we have to do all of these things by ourselves. I'll be honest, during my hardest times, it's been my community, it's been my art, it's been my God, that have helped me to relanguage my story, put meaning into it so that it's bigger than what is happening in this moment. All of those things came together to change perception. And I think that many of us are in that space, holding it together is hard.
Oh, for sure.
Holding it together is hard.
And I feel as women, especially when women are mothers, we feel like we have to do that. And it's not acceptable to, break down or have a moment that we need to get to where we need to be. So what do you see as normally the first sign that a woman's approaching a breaking point, even before she can see it in herself? Are there signs?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So self-care goes right out the door. What does your sleep look like? Are you sleeping? What does your food look like? What does self-care look like? Are you irritable? My first question is, how are you spending your time? Do you like what you do? Do you like your work? What is your community like? Because all of these things are starting to shift when we are at a breaking point. Right? We find that we're not as in communion. We tend to isolate. We tend to give up on the things that keep us sane, like good foods, right? We start to resort back to old maladaptive coping, whether it's, doom scrolling or eating the wrong things or maybe drinking too much or substance abuse. But I think really kind of understanding where do those little shifts start to happen, because once those little shifts start to happen, then they can kind of get into bigger and bigger issues. So being able to pay attention to when is my little breaking point?
Mm-hmm.
When is that happening?
When is my check engine going off?
Absolutely. And being honest with the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
I've had weeks where I'm just super, and I will say to my children, guys, I'm a little bit less present because I'm a little bit more overwhelmed this week. So just work with mommy, right? But giving them, an understanding without, of course, giving them too much to carry emotionally for me, but allowing for the people around you to understand not only what you're feeling, but what you need. Yeah. And I think identifying what you need.
Yeah.
Huge.
Knowing what you need.
Absolutely.
For me, I know I recharge in solitude. Sometimes I just need, everything's so busy. I have so much going on. I just need to sit on my patio or meditate or lay in my bed with no noise, no television, just have a moment of silence and turn it off.
Turn it off.
Just let my mind rest, and being able to have the courage to admit to someone you're in a moment or a season and you need a moment is the biggest first step. A lot of people don't want to do that because they see it as failure or defeat.
Correct. I think that taking the moment, a lot of us want the moment, but we won't take it, because we feel guilty or mom guilt or I have to do this. I am very, very much about fill your vessel. My vessel is filled with 3 hours of beach about every 2 weeks.
Okay.
I can sense when I am just like not exercising as much or I'm eating the wrong things. And I know, okay, beach for me is my escape. It's a sanctuary. It gives me time to connect with salt, sun, and sea. I can be there with my book or with nothing and just be in the elements and be quiet and, let the salt wash away whatever's going on. And then I'm refreshed. And that is preventative and rehabilitative.
Absolutely.
Before things get bad, know what you need. Start taking advantage of those things, right? Putting some things out there that you need. Who do you have that can support? What does that look like for you? What does your community look like for you? And then being active and courageous and proactive enough to take the moment.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I think women struggle with that a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and we get the mom guilt and, everything keeps moving and being able to stop. Like, I just believe so much in you can't pour from an empty cup.
No.
And I didn't always think that way till I realized how much more beneficial it wasn't just to me, it was to everyone around me, including, my husband and my children.
Of course.
When I prioritized myself and my well-being and my mental health. And
yeah, I think that for the generations before us, that was seen as like selfish. You're taking too much time for yourself. No, I need to rest.
Exactly.
Right? I need to be okay with, I need to take this moment and do this so that I can show back up and do a podcast and cook a meal and love my husband and walk my dogs and some of the other things you probably have going on. You need to be able to do that. And I'm big over like, I'd rather deal with the emotion of guilt than the emotion of regret.
I love that.
I will journal my guilt away or I will converse it out, but we can't do that with regret. And I don't want to regret not having been present or not being my best self because I didn't want to step away from my kids for half an hour to be able to, just kind of regroup. And yeah.
I love that. So you specialize in sex therapy and intimacy.
Woo!
That is an area many women, especially mothers and entrepreneurs, put the bottom of their list. Why does it matter? And what does it actually cost a woman to neglect it?
Oh my God, our sexual and intimate health is a pillar of our overall health. I mean, it's like cutting off, your arm. I think that there's so much stigma around sex and intimacy, and we haven't been able to like explore that. And that's fine, but I believe that it's incredibly important. If not, there's, oh my God, there's frustration, there's hormonal stuff that's happening. We need oxytocin to connect and to be able to have serotonin to feel good, and sexuality and intimacy as in safety, right? I mean, sex and intimacy are two very different things because you want to be able to feel safe. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's so important for women. When we feel safe, then my goodness gracious, we can bloom, right? But I think sex without intimacy is sabotage, right? Because then you're just giving without necessarily receiving something back.
Yeah,
and we need that part as well, If not, I mean, again, connection, isolation, withdrawal, frustration. Years ago, I remember when I was married, and I ran into this gentleman, and he was, like a sex therapist or something. And he's like, well, what's that like? And I was like, and I remember him looking at, he's like, I can tell, it's like your aura, your auric field is not. And that to me was so interesting. I was in my 20s when this happened. I didn't understand then what he was talking about, but that is good and natural for us to have. And so I think that we need to explore that, to the best of our ability with somebody that we trust and love and enjoy exploring that with.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that feeling that you get from having that safety in the intimacy, I mean, it changes how you feel and how you operate within the relationship and within even your relationships with other people. I mean, I've experienced that firsthand in a positive and negative scenario because I've been married before and I've never ever felt that safety, and feeling that safety now, it makes me operate differently.
It goes back to authenticity, right? And that performance like that we were talking about earlier. How am I supposed to be in this space, and what is the expectation or lack thereof? And what does me not being able to kind of feel safe and then in a safe place be able to flow safely, right?
Exactly.
And that flow, I think, transfers to every other part of our life.
It does.
I mean, our creativity, when we are flowing, we are more creative. We're able to come up with things, right? We've got this clearance because, we don't have
fear and that fight or flight mode.
Absolutely. That judgment,
in.
Judgment. I mean, not to talk too much about my own experience, but sexual judgment is terrible for a woman.
Of course.
The stigma of, what does this mean? And, all these things that I think really rob us of, oh my God, the beautiful expression of sexuality and creativity.
Yeah, and I think when it's more accepted and you have that safety too, you feel more in touch with yourself, and it gives you the ability to express more of things that maybe you've been suppressing for so long.
Oh, are you kidding me? I think sexual suppression equals suppression in so many other areas of our life.
Of course.
So many other areas of our life. But I think that even that takes courage and a really safe partner,
Absolutely.
to allow you the space to explore, all of the beauty. Listen, man, we are supposed to be this, right? We were not given sexuality and intimacy and creativity to have it suppressed and repressed, but to have it, expressed.
I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that. What does resilience actually look like inside of a therapy room? Because I think people imagine it very differently than the real thing.
What does resilience look like in a therapy room? It can look like anything, right? It can look like punching. It can look like crying. It can look like defeat. I mean, I think resilience in a therapy room is being able to have the space to understand and to talk about what hurts, who hurt you, what you're doing about it, what you're not doing about it, right? The understanding that some days we're going to be better and we're going to show up different. Some days resilience to me is like, I just slept all day because I needed to rest, right? Versus getting up and trying to be resilient and hating it or having a hard time with it or suffering through it. I think resilience is giving yourself what you need at the moment that you need it.
Absolutely.
And being super understanding and compassionate. Compassion is resilience. I have found that when I say, it's okay, G, you're not going to have it all together today. Or it's okay, G, just because you're sad doesn't mean that you're not going to get through it, right? That is resilience, right? That is pushing through in a way that makes sense and in a way that is good and comforting to the self. And that can mean different things to different people,
Absolutely. And being able to identify that in itself, if more people understood that, they wouldn't be so hard on themselves.
No, I believe that. And in a lot of, when I work through resilience with people, it's like, well, where are you unhappy, or what don't you have, or what would you like to have, or what are you feeling? And then what's the opposite of that? Mm-hmm. What would be the feeling that you want? So if it's loneliness, right? I'm so lonely. I'm so sad. Well, what's the opposite of that connection? Well, where can we start there? Where's the one place that you can connect with somebody, right? Oh, I can call my friend. I haven't called my friends for a while because I've been so shameful or this or that. So I think being able to identify, again, what are the things that you need? How are you feeling? And then how can you take what you're feeling and get this thing that you need met so that you don't feel like this for very long? No, it's a little system there we got there.
If the woman listening to this right now is in the hardest season of her life, what do you want her to know?
Oh my God, that God breaks you before he builds you. You know, that you get to decide what this means for you, you know, and you get to decide how you show up to it. A few weeks ago, I was exercising or something, and somebody said, "Why do you exercise so much?" I was like, "Because nobody else is going to raise these kids. Nobody else is going to get me to work tomorrow. Nobody else is," right? That I ultimately I don't have control over my life because only God has control, but that I get to take charge of the things that I'm not happy with. Right? I get to take charge of those things. I get to identify them. I get to look at them. I get to construct what I want it to look like, and I get to deconstruct the parts that don't work for me anymore. And we have that agency. We have that sovereignty over our lives. And that hard, you know, we're not supposed to not have hard emotions. We're not supposed to not have difficult things happen in life. Right? I don't know anybody who's never had anything happen to them and had beautiful days every day. I don't know one person.
No.
Right? So part of the human experience is to suffer.
Absolutely.
And to deal with hard things and to cry and to be stuck for a while and to ask for help and to not think that tomorrow is going to be any better. And then the sun comes out.
You need rain to grow flowers.
You need rain to grow flowers. So to know that in this storm, the heavier the storm, the more beautiful spring will be later, you know? And so I'm not going to say dance in the rain, but pull out an umbrella, you know, acceptance. Acceptance is really hard, you know, radical acceptance, understanding that I'm going through this season. And while I may not understand it all now, I will understand it later.
Will.
Yeah.
And if you sit back after the season has passed and you know, have perceptive, you know, reflection on what you went through and what was it trying to teach you, and you look at it differently, because it's very hard to judge it in the moment. You're only seeing what you're going through. But if you sit back and you really reflect, self-reflection is so important.
Absolutely. I'm a big, huge use. You know, I use journal both in my own life and with my clients. Yeah, go back and read the excerpts of the last time that you were losing it all. Go back and read back when you were so stressful or so sad or who hurt you. And then read ahead a little bit. And what good came out of that? When you lost that job, what new job came up? When you lost that husband, what brand new opportunity came up, even if it was years later? But to understand that our suffering is not in vain.
Absolutely.
You know, our suffering is preparing us. I often say it's not a setback, it's a setup, right? Because in order for us to go, you know, we see ourselves going back, but boing, right? So to understand that, you know, it's difficult and it's hard and it's not easy and it's lonely and it's isolating, but it's necessary. And you just leave that situation stronger and more equipped to handle more things.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I am such a believer in, you know, now that I've changed the lens that I look at life through, like, I needed every single moment, and I wouldn't change the challenges, the disappointments, the sadness, even the good moments, because they built me to who I am now. And this is where I needed to be. It was all a part of the plan. It was a part of God's plan. And if I didn't go through those moments, I look at marriage, for example. You know, I had a failed marriage that was very hurtful. And if I didn't experience what that felt like, I couldn't know what something beautiful felt like.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't appreciate it.
Yes.
You know, we need all those things. Or the bad job, you know, where we were yelled at every day by a boss or fired, you know, or gone through certain experiences. You couldn't appreciate what a career that is going to take you to the next level can look like.
Of course. Yeah. No, again, I think it's necessary. I think that these things are necessary, or it's going to get, you know, it's going to take us to a new career, or it's going to make me realize I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go do something completely different, or something that's closer to who I am or who I'm becoming, right? That we have to be able to use these points in our life as data. And instead of just being reactive to what's happening and scared and just reactive, proactive, right? How is this going to help to propel me into some other thing, right? And then faith, right? Knowing that this sucks, this is hard, this is really difficult, but that this is here for a reason, and that will be revealed to me later, and it will be beautiful, right? It might not be perfect and it might not be right now, but it will be at some point, you know?
Yeah. And I always live by my faith has to be bigger than my fear.
Oh,
Because if not, my fears will take over.
oh yeah. And understanding that your fears are there to protect you, right?
It's like part of the body's natural,
Absolutely.
defense mechanism.
Yeah. My fears are here to protect me, to make sure that I don't do something that is going to, take me off or to mess me up or to hurt me. But we get to do it in the face of fear, and then see the beauty on the other side of that thing. As difficult as that can be,
It can be. This has been so amazing. Tell us where we can find you, what you're building, how the women in our community can connect with you and your work.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
beautiful.
Thank you. So I am in the process of rebranding right now. I'm really excited, but you will be able to find me on my website, which is genesisettienne.com. You can also find me on Instagram at genesisettienne or at Genesis Sneaker Art. And I also host a lot of like live painting events. So last weekend we did one, and it's a therapeutic, it's a guided art workshop for the one last week was for women, but I'm doing them throughout the community for children, for men. So definitely, look out for Painted Out therapeutic paint workshops. They're going to be all around Broward County in the next few weeks. So really excited about that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And it gives people who may be a little closed-minded to the therapeutic world and to that, like a different outlet to express themselves without even feeling like they're doing that. I love that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, painting and art allows for us to not be judgmental and still get some colors and some things on canvas, And it's a place where we don't have to be perfect. It's a place where we can suspend judgment. It's a place where we can actually just like be messy and not worry so much, because it's just paint, right? It's just paint. So it's a really beautiful way to just kind of flow through gratitude and mindfulness in the moment, in community, with friends. Sometimes there's some tears in there, but those are usually welcome.
Yeah.
So.
And they're tears of growth and healing.
Oh yeah. Listen, they're cathartic. Art is cathartic. I can't tell you how many times I've done something on canvas and I'm crying through it because it brings up so much, and it's just beautiful.
It is
And
beautiful.
I love to be able to share that.
You're doing beautiful things.
Thanks, Z.
And healing people. I
Thank
love that.
you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I wish you guys the most incredible luck and fortune with this.
Thank you.
You're beautiful,
so much.
and I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much. It was a
course.
pleasure.